So, first up, should elderly patients get priority treatment in A&E? New figures from the Royal College of Emergency Medicine have found rising numbers of elderly and frail people are facing long waits in A&E, and that they're often left on trolleys in corridors while they wait. 1.5 million people, aged 60 and over, waited more than 12 hours to be transferred, admitted or discharged in England's major A&E departments last year. And the figures show that the older a patient is, the more likely they are to experience a long wait. Here is a bit more about what Health Secretary Wes Streeting had to say this morning.
I mean, frankly, no one should be waiting that long in A&E, but for people who've paid into the NHS all of their lives, our parents, our grandparents, no one wants to see them in particular waiting so long in A&E departments. That's why I think what we are doing in terms of investment in our hospitals, the progress on waiting lists, the GP expansion, those things will make a difference.
Yeah, but is it enough? Should those over the age of 60 get treated before everyone else? Or is that unfair? Should it stay as it currently is, that those who get seen first are those who are most unwell? Yasmin, have you had a recent experience in A&E? I'm hoping not.
Well, the most recent one was about 3.5 years ago, when I had a really bad fall getting onto the tube and broke my upper arm in 4 places. And we did wait 6.5 hours, but that was fine, because I think, but 12 hours? I'm finding this really shocking, because I'm in my 70s, and the idea, I never had so it's jumped. This is the thing that's really alarming. It's 3 times the figure for 2019. And even higher, far higher than 2023, which is a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
So I find that quite shocking.
So those are the numbers for over 60s.
Yes.
They seem to have gone up particularly.
Yes.
And I think, James, we have to ask questions about why that's happening. Is it because more elderly people, older people aren't sticking up for themselves? They don't have that ability to go and, like knock on the window and say, why have I been here so long? What is that?
Well, I think there are a couple of things at play here. First of all, I don't think that we should be doing A&E by age. It should be by need. Clearly, you could be young and you could require emergency treatment now, and if somebody is, yes, of course they're in A&E because they're in pain, but if it's not necessarily urgent, I think that you have to allow the health professionals to decide what's urgent and what isn't. But I think this is also linked to further problems down the line, because a lot of the older people who are going to A&E aren't just going to A&E with something that can be fixed and sent away again. They're going to A&E because it's a problem that they may very well require beds, they may require ongoing treatment, all sorts of things that just isn't there. And so, therefore, if we're going to solve this problem, I kind of agree with Wes Streeting where he says it's not acceptable. It isn't to wait this long. I don't care about how long somebody's been paying into the NHS for or paying their tax for. If we have a modern civilised society that has an NHS system, you should be able to get access to healthcare, whoever you are, wherever you are, within certain time bands. So this is about the collapse in social care. This is about the collapse in the ability to be able to clear the beds when people are fit and well and able to leave them, and we're not discharging. And this is also about staffing and the ability to deploy staff in the right way and focus our resources.
But why are those figures so pronounced with the over 60s? If what you're saying, that it should be a level playing field, we all pay in and it should be allocated on the basis of need, why are we seeing such long waits?
Well, because, as I've said, if you've got people who are going to require beds and treatment. So if, for example, when somebody's triaged or they come in and you can see that it's going to be a problem that's going to require operations or a bed or something else, then they're going to pick and choose the people that they can get in, get out and process quickly, because they just don't have the beds.
That's not on the basis of need then, is it? Well, that's going against what you're saying, because if you're saying, well, we can deal with this quickly, that's not who is in most pain or who needs treatment.
I'm not saying that they're doing what I suggest. I'm saying that we've got a whole range of problems here, and if you're going to untangle them, then just throwing a heap of money at the NHS or paying some doctors some more is not going to be solving it.
It's actually the triage process should always include age, because actually it's far more distressing for really older people in a lot of pain or who are confused, who, all the things we know happen to people as they get older, that they should be actually getting priority treatment if their medical condition is serious. This seems to me quite worrying. I want a question answered that is this part of the whole thing is that, well, they're old, okay? This happens when they're old.
But you could flip that on its head and you could say, well, maybe A&E would become just for people over 60. Because if they are getting preferential treatment, I go in there with my son and daughter, they are at the back of the list. How long is it going to take them to get seen?
Well, this happens anyway. When you're in line, how many times? I mean, I've been to A&E quite a lot in my life. Previously, because I had very serious asthma, which has sort of miraculously got better. But inevitably you think, oh, look, that child with just a little bandage on its knee is getting in before me. This is human nature. Yeah. But our old people shouldn't be having to go through this.
Well, they shouldn't, but nobody should. But then I think...
No, I think old people should not,
Let's take some calls. We've got loads coming in, James. Jay's in Newcastle. What do you reckon, Jay? Should we be prioritising the over 60s when it comes to A&E?
Yes, I do, because they've got a lot of border health conditions, and they've paid into the system, and I do think it's disgusting that they get left waiting and they don't get the care they need.
We all pay into the system, though, Jay. That's the way tax is. That's the way national insurance works. We all pay in. You don't have a bank account at the NHS where you can take it out as you need it.
No, I know that, but the elderly, they've got a lot of borderline health conditions.
So why
heart problems, all sorts like that, and they do prioritise over the younger ones. I've been in hospitals and even in doctors where the elderly, I've seen a couple of elderly and they're crying their eyes out in pain, and the nurses have just carried on, and I've turned around and said, no, see them first. They're more important than me, really.
But that sounds like it's based on the level of pain, the seriousness of the condition, the chances of it escalating and getting worse. What we're saying is, just because you're 60 or over, then you're going to get to the front of the queue.
No, we're not saying that. No, we're not saying that. We're not saying that. We're saying age is on top of the other things in the triage. And actually, and Jay's right, elderly people, when they're left in these conditions, their level of distress and confusion should be part of the diagnosis.
Okay,
I can bear it. I mean, I'm old, but I'm touch wood.
But isn't that the point? Which is, you can't have a system which is just age-based. You have to have a system which, of course, takes account of age, but takes account of the urgentness, if you like, if that's a word, of the situation.
So are you saying these numbers have gone up because what they're suffering from is not urgent enough?
I don't think so. I'm not saying that at all.
I don't think so.
No, I'm not saying that. But I'm also, what I would also say is that there are people who are using A&E because they can't get the doctor's appointments and various other things that, for whatever reason, we've seen the cuts, we've seen increases in population, all that stuff. And therefore, people are using A&E when they shouldn't.
But these figures suggest that those people, over 90s particularly, 33% less likely to be seen within that time bracket. I want to take some more calls. Carla's in Thanks for your call, Jay, by the way. Carla's in Gloucestershire. What do you reckon, Carla? Should we be focusing on the over 60s?
Hi, Matt.
Hi.
Well, I come from a family of GPs, surgeons, that sort of thing. And, really, what we've been suffering from is 14 years of austerity from the Conservative government who've drained us of absolutely everything. And you see, the thing is, in my book, everybody deserves a chance. And it's those, obviously, when you're a doctor, you can't discriminate. And you just deal with what, the person that's life or death. And the thing is, there should be no discrimination. How can a country thrive if the medical situation is so dire that you're having to choose? It's all wrong.
But these figures, Carla, suggest that the over 60s are missing out, are losing out for whatever reason. It's taking longer to reach them than it is under 60s. And it gets worse as you get older.
Well, my mother used to go around the world educating, because years ago she knew that there was going to be a population, imbalance, whereby we'd have a lot of elderly people and not quite enough balance. So she used to educate people on that. But the point is, Matt, when you're, everybody deserves a chance. There shouldn't be this discrimination. This is all wrong. It's basically because our health system's been so drained. And it's not just, I was speaking to another doctor, and she said it's not just the Conservative government, it's been a succession of governments not prioritising. And the thing is, Matt, they say, oh, we put this stuff up thing, but the thing is, they've when you speak to the surgeons, they've been they've given them a budget, yes, but it's all out of date. It's sometimes
Okay, Carla,
can I ask Carla a question?
Yeah, of course, James.
Carla, so one of the things you talked about, I think we've got into this awful habit of just blaming whichever party is in power and saying, well, they haven't done whatever they've done and they've drained it. What they haven't done, and what no successive Conservative or Labour government in the last 30 years, is to reflect the population changes that we've had. So, yes, we're spending more than ever on health. But they didn't take into account the fact that we got 10 million extra people in this country, and they should have put more money into it if they had been truthful with us.
No, yeah, well, we're supposed to be a tiny island, but the thing is, James, you see, you're right when you say that a succession of governments have actually not put in the amount that was necessary or accommodated the population, and you're so right there. The thing is, you only need to speak to a surgeon or a doctor and they will give you the full picture. And I was listening to the head of the National Health System a year ago, and he said the budget's behind the times. And you're right, James. They haven't kept up with the times.
OK, thank you for your call, Carla. We're going to take another one. Kevin's in West Dunbartonshire. Kevin, what do you reckon? Should we focus on the over 60s when it comes to accident and emergency? Or does it just become just for the over 60s in that case? Because no one else will get a look in.
Majority of the over 60s and the elderly don't go A&E. Every time I go to get them, because I work in the ambulance service, they say they don't want to be a burden.
OK.
That's not fair, because there's a number of people that are going to A&E that could easily go to the chemist, their GP, whatever, get dealt with there and then, not go A&E. That's clogging up the system.
OK, so Kevin, do you think that's what's behind these figures, that older people, when they make it to A&E, will sit and wait their turn and maybe not kick up the fuss that people of a younger age group?
I work for the ambulance service. I have sat with patients for up to 4 hours before they even get triaged.
OK.
That's not fair. And then, there's youngsters, whatever, in the public waiting area think their priority over somebody that's elderly, that's got an infection, is more susceptible to getting another infection on top of that.
It's a generation that sits and waits its turn.
We shouldn't talk about whether they've paid in or not. Yep. The thing we should talk about is that in any good society, we have an obligation to the old. We must care for them. OK,
let's take another call. Cheryl's in Powys. What do you reckon, Cheryl? Should A&E focus on the over 60s?
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. I'm a retired nurse. I was in A&E a couple of months ago, and I was there at about 2:30. In the afternoon. I actually got home at about 4 o'clock in the morning. Wow. I did have an X-ray, but I had to go back down for treatment because I had a cracked shoulder. When I was walking through the corridor, the seats on the corridors were covered in elderly people who had been sleeping there all night. Yeah. And I was looking at all they were elderly people, all of them.
There's plenty of evidence to suggest that people are being treated in corridors as well. Obviously not ideal. Adds to the transmission of diseases as well when you're in that kind of environment.
Well, when I was in hospital, we prioritised pain.
So you put pain at the top, regardless of age. So that would be the thing that would decide.
We prioritise anybody coming in who was in absolute pain. We prioritised first, regardless.
Some people can be in pain and not express it, And I would say there are even people of the older generation are very used to hiding pain because
Yes,
of
I
what you
know.
were saying. They don't want to be a burden. The person that shouts the loudest gets treated first.
Absolutely.
Okay.
But the thing is that the nurse or whatever they are should be going around and asking these elderly people, because we know they do hide.
I wonder if that's the answer, that actually a lot of elderly people will hide and mask their pain when actually things are getting steadily worse. We have to leave it there. Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you for all of your calls on this.